that on hold.
Hello everybody and welcome to Monza for the first race of the weekend for the Radical European Masters, the first of a triple header around one of the most popular stops on the Radical European Masters calendar, the Cathedral of Speed. And you join myself, Ben Evans, and Josh Duran from Radical Cars on a beautiful early autumn day here in Monza. For the first time in many years, it's not rained at this event in Monza so far. Anyway, very welcome to see back on the grid and in pole position the reigning champion, Ross Kaiser. Alongside him, Mike Cantillon flying in the Spider.
Yeah, see, Mike's got a little bit of damage on the front end there. He come back in the Spider this weekend and he's been pushing hard. It's a very, very quick car around here, but he had a slight accident, so yeah.
Jamie Constable, another driver who's been making the Spider go very well so far in 2016, and he lines up in third alongside the ever-improving American Jim Booth. And this is a track that I think will really suit the Spiders because they, Josh, have got that straight line speed grunt, the torque that plays into the characteristics of this Monza circuit.
Yeah, it's hard to appreciate just looking at the screen just how long the straight they're just pulling away on now is, and the Spider with its 600 horsepower twin turbocharged Ford engine really does pull down the straight. So you're going to see a lot of overtakes and some switches between them and the SR8, especially when it gets to that straight line.
So here's the grid in full then. Ross Kaiser and Mike Cantillon on the front row from Jamie Constable and Jim Booth. Then Tony Wells and Andrew Ferguson, John Corbett and Alan Costa. Then we get into the Supersport class, which is for the SR3s and the SR3 RSXs. Marco Cenchetti heads them from James Robinson, Ricardo Dona and Yanni Herpia. Then Peter Padden, the Australian from Brian Caldwell, Martin Verity, John Caldwell and Konstantin Gudkayev, who completes the grid ahead of this 60-minute race for the Radical European Masters. It's been a fair amount of time since they were last in action at Donington Park, so I think they're all itching to get back into the fray. Yeah,
we got a few sort of change rounds, unfortunately, for Manhao. Alex Capeda couldn't be here this weekend, but we've got Ross Kaiser, who's been having a fantastic season in the LMP3 series with the 360 racing team. So excited to see what Ross can do today. Very quick in qualifying. Forward to seeing what he's going to do, battling against the Spiders with their sheer pace. And for Konstantin, unfortunately, Ivan is over at Imola, racing in another series, so he's on his own. But again, he's improved a lot this year, and looking forward to seeing what he'll do in the SR3 class.
Well, traitorous behaviour there from Ivan Lukasevich, and hopefully we'll see him for the season finale in Jerez in a few weeks' time. So as ever, of course, it's a mandatory pit stop race that will come in the middle section of the race. It's where the element of strategy starts to come into play and when things start to get turned on their head. And of course, we hope we don't see a safety car, but if in the event that we do, then that of course will add another dimension. The car's just heading from
far, but certainly make for some exciting viewing for us.
Certainly should do, and particularly as we've only got 6 races left in the championship campaign, and therefore any points that the drivers can get hold of will be very gratefully received. So there is the white and black car of Ross Kaiser that he shares with Manhal Alos, and really for Ross this weekend, it's giving Manhal the best possible results, and if possible, finishing ahead of Tony Wells and James Littlejohn.
Yeah, Manhal for a couple of years now has really wanted the title of the European Masters Series. Obviously, he's raced with us for a number of years, and he's driven fantastic this year. I think it's really helped him having the assistance of Alex throughout the year, just to have that professional backing and help and developing through his racing. So with Ross in the car, he's in good hands, so I think they could have a good result here today.
So the field forming up as they head through the Parabolica, the pace car about to peel in. Then we'll be going racing for the first of 3 times this weekend here in Monza as the field rolling towards the gantry. And it is the responsibility of Ross Kaiser to pace the pack before they sprint towards the Rettifilio for the first time. There is the red light. Let's wait for it to change. It does now, and away we go. Here in Monza, a great start from Jamie Constable. He anticipated that well and swamps Kaiser as it's 3 wide amongst the Spiders down towards the Rettifilio, with Mike Cantillon getting his nose in front of Jim Booth as they all squeeze up on the brakes. So it's Cantillon, Booth, Constable, then Kaiser from Tony Wells, a spinner further back in the field. Try and pick out who that is momentarily. It's already Ross Kaiser getting back up to speed as they swoop through the curve today.
There's a great start from the Spiders. Again, just that raw pace off the start line. saw them catapult to the front there, and like I say, Mike and Jamie there, fellow historic F1 drivers, so it'd be interesting to see how they deal with the next few laps of this race together.
It was Ricardo Doner, in fact, who was that turn 1 spinner, and Ricardo, who is right up there in the Supersport Championship battle. That could be a little bit costly for him as Andrew Ferguson swings through the first of the Lesmos, the front of the field, already out of the second Lesmo, and begins the sprint towards the scurry. Now, what a fantastic fight we've got going on at the front of the Supersport class. It is James Robinson, who was just clear of Martin Verity, Yanni Herpia and the rest of them. Meanwhile, Cantle and Constable beginning to form up into a leading fight.
You see Ross there just twitching to get by Jim Booth, but as you've been saying, Jim Booth progressing throughout this year, and he's had a fantastic start and he's really holding his own out there. Spider's a big wide car, and like I say, with that straight line pace, Ross is going to have to really fight to get that place back.
Certainly will, as Constable looking to line up the move on Mike Candle. He darts to the inside of Mike. This being the first lap of the race, thinks better of fighting it, so Constable takes the advantage as they swing out of the parabolica for the first time, as Kaiser looks like the move on Jim Booth. The challenge here for Ross Kaiser is going to be that in a straight line the Spiders have got the legs on the SR8, and therefore he's going to have to rely on agility through the corners.
Yeah, just looking, Andrew Ferguson just about to make a move at the back there, and just gets past. Obviously he's got a bit of traffic. Oh no, it's spin from Cantillon. What a shame.
He was trying for the lead to the inside of Jamie Constable. He got it all wrong. Ross Kaiser, taking evasive action, would appear to have found a way past Jim Booth, and that was entirely my fault. Having said that, Cantillon was just letting the race come to him in the early stages. He pushed a little bit too hard, and now he has got a fair amount to do to recover the ground. Meanwhile, up in second place is Ross Kaiser. He's got Jim Booth coming back at him in fourth. Now it is John Corbett fifth, Tony Wells, and then we've got Ferguson with Alan Costa just finding him. Here is another look at it. Cantillon to the inside, Jamie Constable, and I think Isaac Newton could have told you that wasn't going to work. He was going far too quickly at too tight an angle.
Trouble is there, you're carrying about 180 miles an hour in the Spider, and it's a big braking zone, and just left it too late, and he's turning in on the brakes, and that's what's throwing the back of the car around. So fortunately there's enough runoff there that he slots back in behind Costa, but a shame because it'd be great to see Jamie and Mike racing together. But Ross passed Jim Booth there, so he's going to be chasing down Jamie Constable, who's developing a slight lead. So let's see what Ross is going to do within his next couple of laps.
Mike Cantillon through the speed trap just for that spin, 284 kilometres per hour.
It's a phenomenal amount of speed, and I think that for the viewers at home, just thinking about that, they're braking in just a few metres at the end, so that's where it all comes in.
Well, if you're watching the UK, that's twice as quickly as you will ever have gone on the UK roads at about 140 miles an hour.
Hopefully for most.
For everybody. We turn through the parabolica, and Tony Wells beginning to start to apply the pressure here to John Corbett. Corbett, if memory serves correctly, is run by one of the local teams here, the Monza Garage team, as Ricardo Dona's recovery drive involves a little bit of contact with Martin Verity. Verity rotates, Dona picks his way through.
Fortunately, it looks like Verity just kept it off the gravel there, so he can get going nice and easy. And seeing Cantillon there just picking his way past Andrew Ferguson, just coming up to the back of Tony Wells.
That was a slightly more circumspect 274 kilometres per hour from Mike Cantillon through the speed trap on that occasion, as he sets off in pursuit of Tony Wells, and they're having to sort themselves out in the early stages of this race a little bit, trying to get some clear air, and then begin to build those gaps up before we get into the pit cycle, because in the case of Ross Kaiser, the race leader, he will pass over to Manhal Alos. Jim Booth and Jamie Constable will, of course, go the full distance, as will Mike Cantillon, but then Tony Wells hands over to the very, very rapid James Littlejohn.
Yeah, we know James is phenomenally quick in the SR8, so it's really important for the guys in front to get as much of the lead as they can. Obviously they've got the advantage of being in the Spiders, that they are going to have that pace, but James Littlejohn very, very good behind the wheel of an SR8.
Now, where is the challenge come from? It's Mike Cantillon to the inside of Tony Wells, and that was relatively straightforward from Cantillon. So we've got this lovely battle here between Jim Booth and John Corbett for third and fourth. They're about to be joined by Mike Cantillon, who's bringing Tony Wells with him for company. But as you can see, all of that is allowing Jamie Constable to begin to check out at the front of the field. Coming to the end of the third lap of the race, and Constable is looking set to have a lead here of in the region of 6.5 seconds or thereabouts. Constable has come past our commentary box. Ross Kaiser does now, 5.6 seconds, Constable's advantage.
Yeah, Jamie had a fantastic lead, if you remember back to Paul Ricard, and he had to spin, which he was so frustrated about. So hopefully he can just keep his head down. He's got a nice gap to work with here, so if he just keeps putting consistent laps in and keeps Ross at bay, then he should have a real good chance of doing well today.
Certainly should, as Cantillon begins to try to chase down John Corbett. Corbett tucked up behind Jim Booth. Now, this is good news for Mike Cantillon in terms of that early spin, because it's giving him the opportunity to get involved in the fight for the podium positions fairly early on. Booth busy defending from John Corbett. Into the first Lesmo they go. The three Spiders running in the train. Booth picks his line, Corbett follows through. Almost immediately they head on towards the second Lesmo. Very, very quick corners, as really is the entirety of this Monza circuit. Will then head down under the old banking and on towards the Ascari sequence for the fourth time.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, just looking at the success sessions for the pit stop, which you touched on earlier, both Jim and John Corbett have success sessions. So for Mike Cantillon there, he's going to gain advantage at the pit stop over those two. So they need to, if they can, try and pull away to compensate for the success sessions they're going to pick up through the pit stop.
Well, Mike Cantillon seems absolutely determined to get a good result here. And the difficulty he's got, though, of course, is the two cars in front of him, barring some setup tweaks, are to all intents and purposes absolutely identical. So he's going to have to do this with tactics rather than the mechanical ability he's got underneath him. So they swing out of the parabolica.
Yes, what's so fantastic about single make racing, obviously everyone in identical cars, and it really comes down to driver ability. And actually three drivers here that very, very similar in ability. Cantillon just putting out there on Corbett. Looks like he's just going to get that move done, and maybe even on Jim Booth as well there. So, oh no, again, he's just carried too much speed into that corner and run over the runoff. So that's such a shame. He's going to lose out there and have to gain all that time back.
He needs to be careful as well, Mike Cantillon. It's the second time he's had a moment there, and it means that he could be in with a chance winning the order of Brian Poulter, the race director, and potentially some sort of a penalty. That said, you can't speed through that first chicane. You do have the chicane to go through.
Yeah, you certainly do lose time, but as you say, the stewards will turn a blind eye once or twice, but if that keeps happening, then he may end up picking up a penalty for that, which obviously he really doesn't want, and no one would like to see that. So just needs to control his braking slightly. But as you said, really excited to be racing here this weekend, and it's a circuit that he seems to be really enjoying and have found good pace at. So I see where the excitement.
Earlier on this occasion, past John Corbett. Corbett with his indicator on. I hope that's not a suggestion of a problem there for Corbett, but he was quite slow out of the in 8th place in pursuit of Andrew Ferguson. Alan Costa, the monogas driver, running single-handedly this weekend.
Yeah, it'd be good to see Costa's a solid driver. He's had a very up and down season, as you know, with a number of mechanical issues and race errors that's seen him have some very unfortunate results. But a circuit that he knows, again, with a very local team, he keeps his car. So let's see what he can do. But he is up against a fleet of Spiders here that are showing phenomenal performance at this circuit.
Yeah, there's no Johan Scheer, who had been earning the Starbucks for Costa this year because he'd been absolutely flying. He's not here this weekend. So Costa has got prospect of 3 60-minute races single-handedly to look forward to. But again, the challenge here for the SR8s is that through the corners they're a little bit more agile than the Spiders, but down the straight Andrew Ferguson can just ease clear of Alain Costa. And this is one of those races where you get a feeling that the pit stops and the track position that follows them is going to be absolutely crucial, particularly for the SR8s, because if they get caught behind a slightly slower Spider, we're going to see them really struggling to find a way past.
Yeah, I'd very much agree. Obviously, there's some fantastic drivers in the SR8s. So, as you say, overtaking is very, very challenging for them at this circuit against the Spider. So, anything they can gain in the pit stops that's going to avoid them having to overtake on the circuit is going to be very helpful. And we've got some great guys that will defend very well. So, I think we should see some real excitement after the pit stop period this race.
Well, the excitement now is the extent to which Mike Cantillon can set off in pursuit of Ross Kaiser. He's 8.8 seconds adrift of Ross Kaiser, but Kaiser's not the chief in this race. That's Jamie Constable. He leads by 6 seconds, and that is a reasonably nice buffer for Jamie Constable, as
Yeah, he's had a fantastic pull away there, and actually looking at it, Ross will be pushing hard, as we know, very aggressive, and himself, Mike and Jamie were only a tenth apart between each other's times in qualifying, so interested to see how the Spiders will do on this race pace to catch up to Ross, but the three of them fairly evenly paced, just showing the Spiders sheer acceleration down the straight still.
Now, in terms of the success second position, this is still quite good news for Mike Cantillon, because he's got 5 success seconds to look forward to, whereas the race leader Jamie Constable has got 20 and Ross Kaiser has got 30. So therefore, all things being equal, Mike Cantillon might still find himself emerging in the lead post pit stops. Here is the race leader, Jamie Constable, who has really seemed to get that Spider working for him nicely this year, and he's got the car now set up to his taste and his liking, and is a perennial front runner now as a result.
Yeah, it's great to see Jamie and Mike again. As I said earlier, their priority is the historic F1 series that they race in, which they both love and are doing very well in. But obviously we've seen them for 3 or 4 rounds this year, and it'd be great to see them back for more next year. And 2 really good drivers, good friends, and they've really managed to switch these cars on, which is fantastic to watch.
I mean, from a commentary perspective, I think it was important that we get the chance to drive both the historic F1 and the Spider to do a comparison to give some more insight.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll have to pull up Mike and Jamie after the race, actually, and maybe say a few good words about them now. That will help our case.
So Mike Cantillon, that last lap was not quite as quick as either Jamie Constable or Ross Kaiser, so he lost some ground. He's 16.4 seconds off the race leader, 10 seconds adrift of Ross Kaiser, and he gave away 1.4 seconds to Ross over the course of the last lap. So this is the chance now for Cantillon, with a bit of clear air, to see what he can do as he swings into Ascari, which is one of those iconic corners here at Monza. It's a chicane, but still very, very high speed. And we've got John Corbett a little bit further down the order. John in 5th place. No, he's not. He's in 4th position, because Jim Booth has been shuffled down back through the field. So something's happened there for Jim, because John Corbett's back up to speed. Tony Wells has also found a way past Jim Booth, and then Alan Costa at the back of your picture has moved clear of Andrew Ferguson as well. So as we hit 1/4 race distance, the order's starting to jumble.
Yeah, I wonder if Jim was just caught out in a braking zone there potentially. May get a replay later on to see what's gone on there, but hopefully he'll be able to tag onto the back of those 2 and continue. Costa in the background, who will be chasing him down, so interesting to see what happens between these 4 cars in the next couple of laps before the pit stop window.
Jamie Constable is consistently the quickest driver in this race. He set the fastest lap a couple of moments ago with a 1 minute 48.7. His last lap was a 1 minute 48.9. He's the only driver who's dipping into the 1 minute 48 second bracket with any regularity. And it means that Ross Kaiser slips a further 0.3 of a second adrift of Constable on that 8th lap of the race. As Booth, whatever it was, look, certainly doesn't appear to have been a mechanical issue, because he's immediately coming back onto terms with Tony Wells. But this is a solid performance from Wells. He's holding his own amongst these Spiders, and he knows that James Littlejohn, another driver with historic Formula 1 pedigree, will be able to work some miracles later on in the race, particularly if Tony doesn't push the tyres too hard through this first phase.
Yeah, I think Tony's been a solid driver all year, putting in good performances. We know that obviously James Littlejohn's very, very quick. He's going to struggle slightly this circuit, as we know, but everything Tony can do to keep that position is going to work in their favour post-pit stop window.
And Tony's a great example of a driver who has basically moved from being an absolute novice to an international racing driver through the Radical Motorsport ladder. Yeah,
definitely. Tony's been with us a number of years, starting off in SR3s, and he's been with European Masters. He's had stints in Le Mans running an LMP2 car. He's done some GT work. It's just fantastic to see Tony back with us after a year out, and him and James are very welcome in the paddock, and a very quick duo, and not to be messed with.
We are only a few minutes away now from the pit window opening. That's going to open when there are 35 minutes left on the clock, so in 8 minutes time, as Jim Booth now should be able to use the straight line speed of the Spider to ease clear of Tony Wells and reclaim that 5th position. Does so fairly easily, but then he moves back to cover the inside line into the Retophilia. That opens the door slightly to Wells, and that's exactly what Tony was hoping would happen. Jim Booth outbrakes himself, and Tony reclaims the place.
That was a big lock up from Jim. I think we've seen now a couple of the Spider drivers just caught out on that turn 1. Hopefully that's not flat spot his tyres too much. So with the pit stop coming up, he may be pulled in early and do a tyre change on there, because that did look like quite a big lock up.
It's also really smart tactical driving as well from.
And so as he brakes and locks the tyres up, it creates a flat surface on the tyres, so almost like a 50p coin. So he'll be feeling big vibrations in the car actually, which will affect his vision into the corners.
Yeah, not good vibrations either, with 2/3 of the race remaining.
Certainly not. So hopefully with the pit stop window coming up, they'll be able to change those tyres so that he won't be affected for the second stint of the race.
Although of course there's that balance of the call of, do you change the tyres in the pit stop with the time that costs you, versus do you just make the decision to make the best of it and crack on.
Yeah, certainly. Their team will be onto the radio to Jim now, and he'll be feeding back how severe or not that is. So hopefully for his sake that it's okay and manageable for the rest of the race.
Jamie Constable, the race leader, by 7.2 seconds now from Ross Kaiser in second, then Mike Cantillon in third. And this hasn't been maybe the sequence of laps that Cantillon would have hoped for, having shown such great pace early on. That was a 1 minute 51.2, and that was playing mid 1 minute 49 second laps for Constable and Kaiser. So he's now 19.8 seconds adrift of the race leader Jamie Constable, who is beginning to build up a very nice position. They're also getting in and amongst the traffic, because this is one of the circuits where the differential between the Supersport class cars and the Masters cars is very evident. So they've got Konstantin Gurkaev is the next target for Mike Cantillon.
Yeah, it's worth noting for Mike that because of his accident in free practice 1 yesterday, he actually didn't get out in free practice 2, and obviously missed half of the first practice session. So he's a bit under on laps under his belt, but good driver. So it's interesting to see what he does. And as you said, with this circuit being such high, the Spiders and the SR3s, there's such a small gap there, unlike other smaller circuits we've been to, where actually the two are quite evenly matched.
Essentially, any circuit where power is at the fore, there is that differential, as you would expect to see between the Masters class and Supersport class cars, where the aerodynamics are a little bit more important than the breathtakingly short braking distances of the Supersport class cars gives them a little bit more parity. We're on to the 12th lap of the race if you're Jamie Constable and Ross Kaiser, coming to the end of the 11th if you're Mike Cantillon and the rest of the field. And here is the race leader Jamie Constable, and Constable, we've not seen an awful lot of him, but is making it look very straightforward. Now this is a lot of fun in the Supersport class. It is Ricardo Donat who is doing battle with John Caldwell and Peter Padden, and it would have appeared as if Donat had found a way past Peter Padden on that occasion, and they are all just behind Jamie Constable. It means that last lap from Constable was a little bit slower as he cleared that traffic.
I'm hoping the camera might just pick up on that battle again, because it's certainly interesting to watch. The Super Sports class, as we know, is very exciting, very close racing, and you'll find in most of those cars there's a mixture of amateur and pro drivers, so it makes for some fantastic racing.
It certainly does, as Constable, he's not going to see the pit lane open board on this occasion. A couple more tours. Now here is some more scrapping. It's Brian Caldwell from James Robinson and Yanni Herpier, and they are fighting for second, third and fourth in the Supersport class, and they are about to be caught by Jamie Constable. Now, with an eye to pit strategy, as Ricardo Donat pulls off the road, and that's a real shame for Ricardo, and one that could potentially have bearing on the Supersport Championship as well, as Donat clambers out of the cockpit, reattaches the steering wheel. It's been a problematic race for him, that first corner spin, and now pulled off the road, but I'm not quite sure. He's pulled off somewhere in sector 2. I think that was on the run from the second leg to Ascari.
Yeah, it's such a shame for Ricardo, especially with Stewart getting ready to get in the car. They stood a really good chance on this race, and I don't know if I could see any crash damage, so I wonder whether that's a mechanical failure, but we may find out shortly on that one.
Got something flapping as well.
Yeah, I was just looking. I think the passenger seat belts have come unclipped in that car, and you can see them just flapping on the bodywork, so shouldn't cause any problems, but I'll need to sort that out on the pit stop.
So James Robinson is the target for Jamie Constable. He swings around the outside of Robinson through Curva Grande. It's not a Robinson squash, and then past Brian Caldwell as well into the chicane. And so that was nice and straightforward for Jamie Constable. But it does mean now that Robinson lines up the move on Caldwell. This for second place in the Supersport class, and Caldwell has to park the car in the middle of the road as they swing through the first Lesmo. But Robinson can't pass now because of the car of Ricardo Dona requiring retrieval. That means there's waved yellow flags, and that potentially saves Brian Caldwell.
Yeah, Brian Caldwell, very aggressive driver, fantastic racer on our UK series. So great to see him out in the European races. He just needs to be slightly careful on his defence there, that he doesn't change direction too much. As I say, he's a very passionate and aggressive driver. So interesting to watch him and Jamie over the next couple of laps.
Particularly as they've got Ross Kaiser about to catch them as well, and Peter Padden, Yanni Herpier, all part of that scrap. There is Kaiser. He eases past Herpier, but is he going to have the pace here, Ross Kaiser, to catch them before they get to the Parabolica? He is, but he's going to have to judge it on braking. That's nicely done from Ross Kaiser. That's experience coming to the fore, but it just left the door slightly open for Robinson. Caldwell shut it in the nick of time as they conclude the 13th lap of the race.
It's great driving from Ross, who, as we know, is a multiple European Masters champion in the SR8. So a car that he knows very, very well, a circuit that he knows well and has won at before. So using his judgment well there and not messing up on the SR3s in their Super Sport Championship there.
Well, one of the talking points after qualifying was the track etiquette between the Super Sport and Masters class cars, and really Ross Kaiser there showing exactly how it's done. Just be decisive, make the single move, and then nobody's in any doubt what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very difficult with the two series running within one championship, obviously. But yeah, a lot of guys out there know what they're doing, so it's just making sure they give that respect and don't ruin the race for each other.
Kaiser is just 5 seconds back from Jamie Constable, and with hindsight, Jamie, I think, can feel very relieved that he found a way past those Supersport class cars before he got to the yellow flag section, because that would have slowed him considerably. As it is, it allows him to retain that buffer over Ross Kaiser as Kaiser heads past the point on the circuit where Ricardo Dona had pulled clear, and Dona just awaiting a recovery vehicle to put his car behind the barriers. Now the pit window is open, but in the Radical European Masters, because some of the teams might not have pit-to-car radio available to them, they can only pit in once they've gone past the board that's held from the start gantry saying pit lane open, so they won't be able to pit in on this lap. It will be from the end of the lap that they're about to start.
Yeah, correct. So every single driver has got to go past the board and see that for a time, and then they have their pit window time of 10 minutes. So it's down to the driver and team to work out when they need to come in. So quite often you'll see the pros stay out the longest, and those that have got a pro that are coming in will dip in early to get the professional driver out there and get some quick laps under the belt. Also for the likes of Jamie Constable, he'll be staying in the car. There's a number of guys out there that are doing the whole stint, so the likes of Ross Kaiser hopping out for a fresh driver, which brings both a positive and negative. Obviously for the new driver, they've got to quickly pick up on where the car's at. They've got worn hot tyres, they've got a car that's been racing for half an hour, but similarly the guys like Jamie who've been out there for half an hour, they're going to be getting tired, slightly dehydrated, and it's a warm weather today, so it's interesting to see the balance there.
Well, Constable passed the Supersport class leader there. He is the red car of Marco Cenchetti. So I think we could certainly expect to see Ross Kaiser staying out to the very tail end of this pit window. We'd anticipate the number 2 car of Tony Wells coming in at the first opportunity to hand over to James Littlejohn. For Jamie Constable, Mike Cantillon and John Corbett, they're all doing the race single-handedly, so they will bide their time. Now that's interesting, as Cantillon squeezes between Brian Caldwell and James Robinson. So that just allows Caldwell to consolidate that second place in the Supersport class. It also means that Robinson now comes under a little bit of pressure from Yanni Herpier. We've still got the yellow flags covering the second Lesmo.
Yeah, it's just giving Brian a slight break so he's not having to defend, so gives him just a lap or two to really try and pull that gap slightly.
Brian sees Cantillon coming, does exactly what he needs to do, which is stick to the racing line, put up no opposition whatsoever to the spider of Mike Cantillon. Cantillon, because this is one of the thirstiest circuits that they visit over the course of the Radical European Masters season. It also gives Jamie the chance, as you can see, the left of your picture, to rehydrate if he can find an appropriate gap in his helmet.
Yes, he's got 80 seconds there for that pit stop, and as you said, big 100 fuel tank in those cars, but down to the sheer speed and the amount of time on the throttle at this circuit, they do need refueling. So use a high pressure dump churn that gets that fuel in quickly before doing the other checks and getting the driver back in.
As expected, Tony Wells is in to pass over to James Littlejohn, but also in is Jim Booth. So we're seeing a school of thought, which is let's get the pit stops done and out of the way, and then have a slightly longer second half to the race. The exception to that, of course, being Ross Kaiser, because he will hand over to Manhal Alos through the pit stops, and Ross, being the pro driver in that car, will take advantage of the extra 6 minutes and 3 or 4 laps that offers on track.
Yeah, as you know, Ross absolutely performs so well when he's got a big open track, and he's got nobody in front of him now. So expect to see a couple of quick laps from Ross here before he brings that car in for the pit stop. So
Andrew Ferguson is in to hand over to Jeremy Ferguson.
Yep, interesting to see how the Jeremy will do in this second stint. Seems like they've struggled slightly to get that car performing as the other spotters this weekend. But as you know, Jeremy's slightly quicker driver than Andrew generally. But yeah, good to see the pair racing together this weekend.
Certainly is. And Jeremy's got a fair amount of work to do when he does get underway. Now here is Jamie Constable, who emerges from the pits right in front of Ross Kaiser. So that nice clear empty track that Kaiser was hoping for is no more.
Yeah, certainly. It's worth noting Jamie's going to have obviously more fuel on board now because he's just gone to the pit stop. So slightly heavier, but obviously he's managed just to have a quick rehydrate and brake. So he should be back out there and straight on it.
Now this is going to be very frustrating for Ross Kaiser, because it means that Jamie's going to have to just be a little bit more cautious in the braking zones and through the corners with that heavier car, which is exactly the point in the circuit where the SR8 could really push on. Also into the pits is Mike Cantillon, as he gets his mandatory pit stop out of the way nice and early. In the Supersport class, that is led by Marco Cenchetti, and Marco, we would anticipate will stay out to the very end of the pit window before handing over to Marcello Maraggiotto. Now, here is Ross Kaiser. This isn't the fight for lead of the race, because Constable, having had his pit stop, is a lap down, but Kaiser needs really to try and make this move on Jamie Constable to give Manhal Alos a chance of fighting for victory.
Yeah, Jamie's got to be careful he doesn't defend too much here, because he doesn't want to lose any time off that lead that he's got. But similarly, like you say, keeping Ross at bay will just allow him to keep that gap opened up before Manhal does switch into the car. So I imagine Ross has got another 1 or 2 laps before he's going to dip in for the pit stop.
And here for Ross is the frustration, because Jamie can just plant his right foot and accelerate away towards the Parabolica. It also means that the Raw Motorsport team may just make the call to bring in Ross a lap early, particularly if they feel that he's losing time to Jamie Constable.
Interesting to keep an eye out here for Mike Cantillon, who had a just over 1 minute pit stop, so expect to see him.
And Robinson pitting in early, so Jack Manchester takes over.
Yeah, good to see Jack out at Monza. Jack's an experienced SR3 driver, younger guy, but he races in the Barbados series at Bushy Park Circuit. He's also racing our UK series this year, so he's a real emerging driver, and he's had a lot of seat time, so expect him to do well this weekend. But it's a new circuit for him, and he's new to the European scene.
Well, great to have him on the grid, and certainly is looking as if he could be poised to challenge for a Supersport podium. Also, another new face on the grid this weekend in the Supersport class is Austin Kinsella, which, for those of you who have got your Formula Ford 1600 anoraks to the ready, will be a name that will evoke fond memories, as the Constable and Kaiser train accelerates out of Ascari.
See Ross is all over the back of Constable there, just taking the opportunity, but the Spider's just that bit quick that he can't have the opportunity. Cantillon in the background will be gaining from this, obviously, as the two are fighting. It's important that Cantillon gets a couple of quick laps in here, and that should put him just at the back of Jamie Constable, which will make for a fantastic second half to this race.
I think the other thing that it's going to do as well is, with the 30 success seconds for Ross Kaiser and Manhal Alos, it's going to give Cantillon a fairly safe second place by the time that all is done and dusted, because that last lap for Ross Kaiser was a 1 minute 49.8, and that plays Ross's best, which he set a couple of laps previously of a 1 minute 48.6, so he's losing about 1.2 seconds a lap at the moment behind Jamie Constable.
Yeah, certainly Manhal Ellis will be watching the timing screens now, probably getting very frustrated because he knows how much of a task he's got on his hands. But Manhal's a good driver, and as we know, we've seen both Jamie and Mike make mistakes in the past and even today. So Manhal will be just putting in steady laps, trying to catch up to the back of those, hoping that one of them or both of them may make a mistake.
We don't want to put the curse of the commentator on anybody, and so far it has, in spite of one or two little spins, it's been a very clean race. It's again through the Lesmo. You can see the frustration for Ross Kaiser. Is he going to try and force it to the inside Jamie Constable into the second Lesmo? No, he's not, because...
Quick look there, but just couldn't make it happen.
And also, Ross is experienced enough and professional enough not to let his temper maybe get the better of him and try a move that's not really on.
And that's trouble in these situations. It's easy to get frustrated in that cockpit, but yeah, as you say, Ross knows that what he needs to do.
Yanni Herpia in the pits, and the Supersport class cars don't need to refuel through the pit stops, which is why you're seeing the Supersport drivers who are going the whole race single-handedly staying in the cockpit. Another driver, just to draw your attention to in the Supersport class, is Bradley Ellis, who returns to the championship this weekend alongside John Caldwell, and Bradley is just behind James Winslow. That's a good scrap. Two very quick drivers.
Yeah, certainly Bradley very experienced in the radicals. Sorry, just looking there as Ross does dip in for his pit stop now. But yeah, Bradley Ellis, fantastic driver. Good to see him with John Caldwell. Again, John, brother of Brian, been racing our UK series. So it's great to have them out in Europe. I think him and Bradley together, that will really help to accelerate John's progress. So yeah, him and Jamie Winslow on circuit. Let's see what happens.
So into the pits comes Ross Kaiser, who is out of the car within instance of it coming to a halt. Just goes to give Ellis a little bit of a briefing. He'll just be saying what the car's doing, anything to particularly watch out for on the track when he does get up to speed. Now, this is essentially a race against a stationary car for Jamie Constable now. He is a third of the way through the lap, and he was almost a lap down to Ross Kaiser at the point at which Kaiser ducked into the pits. So now the question is, where does Manhal Ellis emerge into all of this? Does he emerge into second place, which is where Ross Kaiser was running prior to the pit stop cycle? Does he emerge in first, or is he a little bit further back by the time the success seconds have worked through?
See Mike just in the back of the picture there. So interested to see if he's managed to keep the laps in and catch up to Jamie at all.
That last lap, Cantillon was a little bit quicker than Jamie Constable, to the tune of 0.4 of a second. So he brings Constable's advantage down to 4.9 seconds. It's a further 15 seconds back to John Corbett in fourth place. So we'd expect that Ellis is going to slot into third when he emerges from the pits. Commentary box, by the way, overlooks the pit lane exit, so we'll be able to see as Ellis does run down the pit lane and looks to rejoin. But he's certainly not come past us so far, as Jamie Constable exits the Parabolica and completes the 19th lap of the race, and he is going to regain the lead of the race this time around because Constable streaks past, as does Mike Cantillon. No sign of Manhal Ellis as yet, so Ellis's best chance is for third. It might even be a little bit behind that. Here comes Manhal now down the pit lane. There's not going to be an awful lot in it between Manhal and John Corbett. In fact, John Corbett, I can tell you, has gone past Manhal, because there is the Australian driver as Ellis emerges. And now for Manhal, that make life a little bit more difficult, because although he's well clear of James Littlejohn and will take points off Littlejohn in the championship fight, he could really do with getting up onto the rostrum.
Yeah, I don't think we didn't see that one coming with John Corbett there, but yeah, that's a fantastic performance from him. And obviously Manhal just taking a slightly long pit stop there, which has hurt his race slightly. So see what he can do now. Oh, I'm just looking at the car. That's Bradley Ellis, is that in the Caldwell car, just running wide?
I think it possibly is, as he bounces back onto the road, coming out of the second Lesmo.
Unusual to see a mistake like that from Bradley, so wonder if he's just struggling to get used to that car, or if there's some slight sort of worn tyre issues there.
I think always one of the difficulties for the pro drivers is that, not unreasonably, the setup is always geared towards what the gentleman driver prefers in terms of their confidence with the car, and sometimes that means they're getting into a car that's not 100% to their liking. And something like Bradley as well will just push as hard as he possibly can. Now, Jamie Constable, that last lap was 0.8 of a second quicker than that of Mike Cantillon. So Constable re-extended his advantage at the front of the field as the pit window is closed. We've got a third of the race to go, and Jamie Constable, who has led pretty much since we got underway, is looking well set for victory, with Mike Cantillon in second, 5.4 seconds adrift. He and Constable are currently taking turns to either extend or close that gap as Cantillon negotiates the Rettifilio. Then John Corbett's a further 17 seconds back, and Manhal Alos is 6.5 seconds back from John Corbett, so a fair amount of chasing required for Ellis if he's going to get onto the rostrum.
Yeah, no, there'll be a lot of frustration from Manhal this weekend, as we know he's been contesting this championship and looking to do well here this weekend, and the Spider has just performed phenomenally. A mixture of good drivers, a very quick car. Obviously it's made for this circuit, and all the guys very experienced behind the wheels, so managed to get a good setup. So yeah, a lot of frustration I imagine from Manhal, but if he puts in some good pace, he should be able to get a good result.
In the Supersport class, that is currently led by Brian Caldwell. He's 6.2 seconds clear of Marcello Maratiotto, and it's Jack Manchester who is third in the Supersport class. But we've got James Winslow and Bradley Ellis both trying to close that gap down a little bit.
And James Winslow hopping in the SR3 that Peter Padden drove in Stint 1. Peter's an Australian driver and races in the Radical Series in Australia. And they've actually got their cars being shipped to New Zealand for the final round of their season at the moment. So during his short break, he's come over to Europe to do a little bit of racing.
As one does. And why not? Why not come to Monza? That's a big wobble from Mike Cantillon into the Parabolica. He just had to correct that as he turned in.
Yeah, the beauty of the European Masters Series is because we go to all the big F1 circuits, which all the guys, you know, from Australia, America, overseas, watch on TV. They love to come and drive them. So yeah, the likes of Jim Booth as well from the United States of America, very successful racer out there, but they love these European circuits.
Well, they're just such a unique challenge as well, as John Corbett continues the multinational flavour in the field. He is another Australian, and he gave away half a second to Manhal on that last lap. So this could get interesting here, particularly as Alice is in the SR8, Corbett's in the Spider, so they can both play to the strengths and weaknesses relative to each other of their cars. So that could be quite entertaining as we head towards the latter stages of the race. In 5th, it's Alan Costa. 6th is Jim Booth. 7th is Jeremy Ferguson. 8th is James Littlejohn. And then 9th in the Supersport class is Brian Caldwell from Marcello Maratiotto, Jack Manchester, and others. And that is James Winslow making the move on Yanni Herpia. Winslow, the car with the yellow nose cone, darts in front of the Finnish driver Herpia. And that is done and dusted before the Rettifilio.
Yeah, we've seen Jamie Winslow share the Spider with John Corbett this year sometimes, so interesting that Corbett's going alone this race, and he may be struggling slightly in an hour-long race, and this heat and at this circuit is hard work, so interesting to see if he can keep those lap times up.
Well, James Winslow, although a British driver, he looked to Asia and Australasia to further his racing career. Very successful in Formula 3 in Australia and across Asia, for now coming back to race a little bit more in Europe. And he is up into 4th in Supersport class. He's got 5 seconds to chase down to Jack Manchester, so that's a battle that's worth keeping tabs on, as in fact is Manchester, who is just beginning to close up onto Marcello Maratiotto too. So although there are some reasonably sizable gaps at the moment, with 17.5 minutes to go, there's every chance that a lot of those are going to close down. And there you see that fight for 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the Supersport class.
Yes, certainly, and as you say, it's a very, very competitive field this year for the Supersport class, so none of the drivers are going to want to give up those places easily. And as you say, with the quick drivers such as Bradley and Jamie coming up from behind, it'll be interesting to see just how much of a fight the other drivers put up.
Out of the chicane comes Jamie Constable, our race leader, 5.1 seconds, his advantage over Mike Cantillon, with John Corbett in 3rd, a further 20 seconds back. So for Jamie Constable, well, this is the sort of race that he has been threatening to deliver throughout the course of the season. Remember, he was so good in Paul Ricard, and circumstances just went away from him.
Yeah, he was absolutely kicking himself in Paul Ricard because, as you say, phenomenal race. He's a very consistent driver, and when he gets out there, he puts in quick laps one after the other. And as I say, he's not had as much seat time as the other drivers this year because they've been focusing on other marks. But yeah, great driver, and he's going to really hope to hold this together, and he deserves this, actually.
Now, we've got a stop-and-go penalty for John Corbett in third place. And we were a little bit surprised to see Corbett emerging from the pit cycle ahead of Manhal Alos. And the fact he's got a stop-and-go penalty suggests that we were probably correct in being slightly surprised.
Yeah, and as we're seeing, it's a 3-second stop and go, so we can presume there that left his pit box just a few seconds too early. So that's a real shame for him, actually, and that's inevitably going to see him drop one, if not 2 or 3 places. So.
Now, is this, with an eye towards the championship, going to be further good news for James Littlejohn? He's already found a way past Jeremy Ferguson, but stop and go for Corbett might see Littlejohn being able to gain another position. There you have confirmation on your screen of that stop and go penalty for John Corbett. Meanwhile, Jack Manchester has been caught already by James Winslow, then Yanni Herpy. They've got Littlejohn and Ferguson closing onto their tail. So this is not really what James Littlejohn would like, which is these Supersport class cars all busy fighting for the podium. Now this is going to be the test for Manchester. He has got Winslow, Herpy just behind him, and then the SR8 of Littlejohn trying to navigate the path.
And obviously Littlejohn going to want to get past as soon as he can, but he's got to be very careful there because all 3 of those are going to be racing and not want to lose any speed. But actually, the way that's worked out, he can just slide down the outside there, hopefully get through clean just before Jack Manchester and not affect their race at all.
And Littlejohn is able to do exactly that. Really nice driving from Littlejohn. Made sure he didn't interrupt the scrap whatsoever, as Winslow carries an awful lot of momentum out of the Parabolica and should have a good run here at Jack Manchester as they run side by side down the start and finish straight. Here is a replay of a big moment for Bradley Ellis.
Just the front diffuser there is just wedged under the barrier, so I wonder if there's something wrong with that car, because obviously you wouldn't expect to see that from Bradley ordinarily.
I just wonder also maybe if John Caldwell has elected to stay in the car for the whole race.
It could well be, yeah. I'm just looking at our timing screen trying to work out. It does show that Bradley's in the car, but maybe we'll have to look into that shortly.
But I think your hypothesis nonetheless that something might not be quite as it should be with the car is spot on. A very unusual way for the car to snap and lose traction on the way into that section of the circuit. So the recovery crane is out to get to work. Littlejohn waiting to pick his moment to negotiate Marcello Maratiotto. Maratiotto second in the Supersport class, and for him, Marco Ciancetti, the demise of Riccardo Dona, good news in their championship charge.
Yeah, certainly. It certainly helped them out, and it's actually a real shame because I think we would have seen a fantastic little battle up the front there. So, shame that Riccardo.
And then John should emerge from the pits. Indeed, he does now. Behind Jim, but clear of James.
It'd be interesting to see how the last few laps are going to play out. Brian Caldwell, as I said earlier, fantastic driver and very good defending, so he's not going to want to give that place away at all. So we could see some really exciting last couple of laps there if we can get Winslow to catch up to that SR3 of Brian Caldwell.
Yeah, will want this win dearly and won't be minded to concede it over the latter stage of the race. That's a huge lock-up from Marcello Maratiotto, and the car trying to snap directions on him midway through the chicane. Winslow, meanwhile, just making it look so easy, and that's the key to these Supersport class cars, is you just got to let the car do all the hard work, and when it's going well, it just looks so straightforward. Of course it's not, but that's the real trick.
Yeah, certainly, and just looking at Jack and Yanni here, wondering whether Yanni might try and make a move. Yanni probably slightly more experienced, a few more miles under his belt, but as you know, Jack a very quick young driver, so the two of these may have a little battle. Meanwhile,
Winslow's already caught Maratiotto. Don't think Yanni's going to be quite close enough to challenge Jack this time around into Ascari. He's not, and now Jack Manchester needs to focus on the exit down towards the Parabolica. If he can do that, there won't be an awful lot that Yanni Herpia can do, because it's a very still day here, quite humid, quite warm, but there aren't those strong head and tail winds you sometimes get here that really aids the slipstreaming.
No, yeah, being such a flat open circuit, any winds really do affect the braking and handling of the car. So nice steady days helping these guys. They can predict exactly what the car's going to do under those braking zones.
Because the wind dying down a little bit overnight. Certainly it was very breezy yesterday, but today it is, well, about as nice a weather as you could really hope for, as we've got waved yellow flags into the Rettifilio. Now, why is that? I think it was just a quick spin for somebody, because they've been retreated again. Who had their moment? We'll find out in due course. Just hope it wasn't Brian Caldwell, because that would take away some of our entertainment. Now, that last lap from Brian was a 1 minute 59. It was 1 minute 56 for James Winslow, as he found a way past Marcello Martiotto up into second in the Supersport class.
Yep, so Winslow just got a few laps left to try and close that gap. So I think we might see a last lap shootout, which we do love.
Certainly do. There's still 10 minutes of the race remaining. Jamie Constable, there he is, remains the race leader. 5 seconds his advantage over Mike Cantillon, and the performance offered by the Radical Spider, that these two drivers who race Formula One machinery with the other side of their motorsport life have chosen these cars to go competing in contemporary machinery.
Yeah, certainly for them, they chose the car. It's high powered, it's high downforce, and the great thing about racing the Radical is, although still a very expensive car, it's so much easier to get parts and to run the cars. Obviously, the historic F1 cars, fantastic fun, but you can't just get parts off the shelves, and you can't just go and run them at any track. So it's a great car. You can use it on a track day, you can use it for racing. So for guys like this, it's perfect time for them to hone in their skills. And actually, I know they'll be at Monza not next year but the year after with the Formula One. So good opportunity for them to get some laps around the circuit in a machine that's got some similar power and downforce.
Across the line then to complete the 27th lap of the race. Mike Cantillon conceding a little bit of ground. It's Jamie Constable over the course of that last lap. James Winslow is now, we're just 5 seconds back from Brian Caldwell in the fight for Supersport victory. That last lap from Caldwell a little bit slower than he'd have hoped for, 2 minutes versus 1 minute 6.7 from Winslow. So though,
I think we might see Winslow catch Caldwell slightly earlier than what maybe predicted. He's showing phenomenal pace and seems very, very comfortable in that car.
Certainly does. In third position, Manhal Alos is going to be able to claw back a hatful of points from Tony Wells and James Littlejohn. Alain Costa is there in fourth. Fifth is Jim Booth. Sixth, John Corbett. Seventh, then James Littlejohn. Eighth is Jeremy Ferguson. And then Brian Caldwell in ninth, leading the Supersport class from James Winslow and Marcello Martiotto. We've only lost 2 cars from this race, which was the John Caldwell, Bradley Ellis entry, and then Ricardo Dona, who peeled off the road before he had a chance to hand over to Stuart Mosley. Now, this is Alain Costa. Alain, 8.3 seconds back from Manhal Alson, actually giving away time to Manhal, so that's not a concern for him. But he has got Austin Kinsella, rather, just in front of him, having taken over from Martin Verity.
Yep, good to see those guys out racing. Again, Martin Verity, a customer that races in the UK series, and he's just dipped into a bit of the European rounds this year and really enjoying it. And good to see him with Austin in the car. Obviously, Austin, a very experienced and good driver. So between them, that should be a fantastic pairing, and we're hoping to have them back next year for a full season.
James Littlejohn, meanwhile, is not done and dusted just yet. He is closing up at a rate about a second a lap on to John Corbett, and he's only 2 seconds back, so this could be on between now and the checkered flag. It's the fight for 6th place, but for Littlejohn and Wells, 6th would be a very good result from today. It's solid points, but also it means they'll be able to shed some of their success seconds for the first of tomorrow's 2 races.
Yeah, certainly. Interesting as well, looking at the Bradley Ellis John Caldwell car. Actually managed to get back on track and running, so hadn't noticed that one come back.
Well, there's always a lovely attitude here at Monza, which is if the car is still runnable and the driver's willing, a way is for it to get back onto track. Now I'm just looking, that doesn't look like Bradley Ellis's helmet to me.
Yeah, I think you may be right that John did maybe stay in to do the whole race, so that may explain a few reasons as to why he's had a slightly harder second stint.
Step up to the UK competition, 25 and 40 minute races, and then into Europe. It's an hour which is a big demand both mentally and physically.
Yeah, certainly. It's it doesn't sound like a lot an hour of driving, but physically it's very difficult. It's noisy, it's hot, it's loud, and you're pulling significant G-forces. These cars are quick, and like I say, you're hitting speeds of up to 180 miles an hour and braking in very short distances. So it's tough, but it does show that working way up through the ladder does work. But it just slight bit of time to get used to these longer races, and learning that racecraft. It's certainly very different from the short sprint races.
Certainly is. Now, Little John is poised to pounce on John Corbett. The Supersport class lead is also likely to change because James Winslow is now within 2 seconds of Brian Caldwell. So some great scraps in the latter stages of this first of 3 races this weekend from the Radical European Masters. We will be back again tomorrow at 11:45 local time, so 10:45 if you're watching in the UK, and then again at 4:45 local time, so 3:45 if you're watching in the UK for the further 2 races here from Monza.
So Little John just approaching the back of Corbett there. Shame for Corbett that he had to have that stop go, because that's brought him back slightly, but he's defending well there to Little John, who's trying to look for a way out. But again, you'll see here Corbett will just be able to pull down on the straight, and Little John will have to regain that space.
And this is the frustration here for James Little John, having got to within about half a second. Corbett opens up the advantage once more, and that said, the Australian actually through the speed traps was a little bit slower than Little John, but I think that's more a case of Corbett braking slightly earlier, and now Little John looks to try and challenge into the Curva Grande. Now this is Little John's chance if he can fluster Corbett, force him offline. It means that Corbett can't take advantage of the torque and the power of the Spider, and that might give Little John the chance to challenge into the chicane, but he's too far back on the brakes surely this time around.
Yeah, again, just slightly, Corbett just had a good pull out of that corner and managed to regain that gap. But he's got to watch out, because the smallest mistakes now, James Little John's right on his tail, and he won't hesitate to make a move.
And he could almost lose the SR8 behind the Spider because he's so close now, Little John. But he cutting through the Lesma. Scary.
Just around gap from Winslow to Caldwell has now dropped to well under a second, so I expect to see him making a move any minute now.
As a problem there for Austin Kinsella, or possibly just very circumspect driving. He moved to the inside of the road, allowed the 2 quicker Masters class runners to swoop through. They're about to start their penultimate lap of the race, although it might even be their anti-penultimate lap of the race, depending on the track position of Jamie Constable, as Little John draws alongside Corbett as they come out of the Parabolica and powers past, and Corbett has got a problem and slows dramatically. And at first it looked like good positioning from James Littlejohn, and John Corbett is fishing around. Possibly looks like that car is stuck in gear. It doesn't seem to be anything more severe than that. And suddenly it's back up to speed for Corbett.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened. They seemed that he'd lost either all drive or all power for just a few seconds, but obviously it was enough for Little John to get that move done. So still looking around at the cockpit a little bit, but hopefully he'll be able to keep that car going. But obviously damage is done now, and with just over a minute to go, he's going to struggle to get back past Little John. He's
lost several seconds. Here is Jamie Constable. Constable turning into the Rettifilio for the penultimate time of asking, and again just taking things fairly steadily here. Jamie Constable doesn't need to push any more necessary, rather this is for the final time of asking for Jamie Constable. Less than a minute left in the race.
Yeah, very impressive drive from Jamie. He's been very smooth, very consistent. As you said, this is the drive he's been promising for a long time, so he's going to be very, very happy with this, and let's see what he repeats over the weekend as well.
It's very unusual as well to see what is almost a lights to flag victory in the Radical European Masters. He was in second briefly during the pit stop sequence, but essentially he has been in total control of this race, and through this final lap is giving the curbs, the white lines, a very, very wide berth indeed. He doesn't want to do anything more than he needs to, as he heads on towards Ascari.
We see confirmation on our timing board that James Winslow did get that move done on Brian Caldwell, so shame we missed that one, but imagine he managed to get past fairly easily, so takes the lead in that Super Sport class.
It wasn't quite the final lap, but it was very, very close to the end of the race as Jamie Constable heads towards the Parabolica for the final time. I'm sure that he will be euphoric to see the checkered flag waiting for him as he heads out of the Parabolica. Heads through the legendary right-hander now, and then can plant his right foot for the final time. It's going to be victory in the Radical European Masters here at Monza for Jamie Constable. A superbly measured race, and he is overjoyed with that. The fist pumping out of the cockpit. Second place to Mike Cantillon, and third, after a fashion, will go to Manhal Alos on the road, but he is currently under investigation for cutting the chicane. Although Alos's advantage over Alan Costa at 10 seconds is such, there would have to be a fairly substantial penalty.
Yeah, something that obviously they'll look at after the race, so hopefully for Manhal that won't have any effect, or that he'll have enough of a gap there to cover any penalties that may come his way. But I think Manhal will be relatively happy with that result. Obviously he would like to be up there on the first step, but with the performance of the Spiders, he's brought that SR8 home in third place, and a little fist pump there shows that he's obviously happy with his result there.
And James Winslow has indeed won the Supersport class alongside Peter Padden from Brian Caldwell, then Marcello Marattiotto and Marco Cencetti. But we're only through the first part of the weekend for Radical European Masters. 2 more races to look forward to tomorrow. So we have got plenty of action to look forward to. So let's take a look back then at the best action from the race. And it was off the line really, where Constable just got the jump. He anticipated the start very well, able to overhaul Ross Kaiser. And then as Mike Cantillon led through the first corner, it all got quite busy. Into the Parabolica for the first time. Constable took the advantage from Mike Cantillon. Cantillon looked to fight back into the Retto Filio a few moments later, pushed a little bit too hard, and around he went, and thereafter Constable was relatively unchallenged at the front of the field. Behind, there was plenty of jockeying for position in the early stages as Jim Booth did battle with Tony Wells, the American pushing just a little bit too hard to try and overhaul him. Meanwhile, Ross Kaiser in second place was trying to peg Jamie Constable and ease away from Mike Cantillon. Post pit stops, and James Littlejohn was trying to push as hard as he could to claim maximum points for himself and Tony Wells, as Jeremy Ferguson was one of several drivers to overstep the mark a little bit at the Retto Filio. But for Jamie Constable, it was a richly deserved win. He controlled the race absolutely beautifully, and he takes first blood here in Monza from Mike Cantillon in second, Manhal Alos and Ross Kaiser in third. A look then at the final results. So Constable wins it from Cantillon, Alos on Kaiser, Alan Costa. James Littlejohn snatching fifth on the last lap, so more points for him and Tony Wells. Jim Booth in sixth from John Corbett and the Fergusons, with then Peter Padden and James Winslow winning the Supersport class from Brian Caldwell, Marcello Marattiotto and Marco Cencetti. Good drives from Yanni Herpia, and the same for Jack Manchester and James Robinson. Konstantin Gudkayev climbing to eventually finish in 14th. More problematic for John Caldwell, Bradley Ellis, Austin Kinsella and Martin Verity. And Ricardo Dona we sadly lost early on. So delight in Monza for Jamie Constable. Josh Duran and myself, Ben Evans, will be back for 2 more races tomorrow, but until then, from Italy, it's goodbye.